What's up, gamer? My name's Uluko, and today I'm going to show you how to get through Act 9 of Path of Exile 1's campaign faster. As a quick disclaimer, this is not meant to be a super optimal guide for speedrunners to clear through the whole campaign in 2 hours flat. It's meant for beginner and intermediate players to share the tricks that I use and the paths that I take in each act to speed things up as someone who takes 5 to 7 hours on average to go from the beginning of the campaign to the end. When you leave Act 8, the first zone you find yourself in is called the Blood Aqueducts. This is a very long zone with 2 pathways leading directly to the top left, where you can find the door to Highgate, the town of Act 9. One other thing you need to know about this zone is that it's also stuffed full of monsters, and if you're anywhere below level 60 by this point in the campaign, this is an ideal place to fix that issue. In the past, I used to farm this zone until I reached as high as level 63, but I think that's a bit overkill. Usually, going up to level 60 before moving on works out well enough for me. If you're already at or above level 60, then you can just run along and continue the story without farming this place at all. If you do decide to farm here, run along the path and kill monsters until you reach Highgate, go through the door, then turn back around, and if you're on PC, hold Control and click on the door to open the window that lets you make a new instance, then press the new instance button to refresh all of the monsters that you killed. If you're on console, walk up to the door and press triangle if you're on PlayStation, or Y if you're on Xbox, then click on the new instance button in the window that opens up there. From there, run all the way back through the zone, killing more monsters until you reach the waypoint at the beginning of the zone, then do the same thing you did with the door in Highgate, except this time open the waypoint and click on the Blood Aqueducts pin on the world map. The same menu will open up, click new again, and it'll give you another new instance, this time starting from the waypoint. Keep going back and forth like that until you reach level 60, then make your way back to Highgate. When you're ready to move on, go to the top right side of town and use the door on the far right to enter the descent. There's not a whole lot to do here, so just run as far to the top right as you can, and you should find a supply hoist. Click on it to go down to the next level, where you also need to go as far to the right as you can to find another supply hoist. This will lead you to a 3rd level, where you also need to go as far to the right as you can for yet another supply hoist. But this time, that supply hoist is called the Vastiri Desert, which is the next zone. Here, we need to find a waypoint and a quest objective called the Storm Weathered Chest. From the entrance, continue running to the right and start by looking for the waypoint. The location of the waypoint differs from layout to layout, but it's usually pretty easy to spot on your minimap by running to the right. The location of the Storm Weathered Chest varies much more heavily from layout to layout than the waypoint does. Sometimes it's to the top left of the waypoint, sometimes the bottom left, other times the bottom right. Unfortunately, you just have to explore the zone until you find it. At the very least, the chest will be marked on your minimap with an exclamation point when you get close, so make sure to pay attention to your map and look for that. When you find it, click on the Storm Weathered Chest, and a bunch of monsters should spawn in waves. Kill them all, and when the last one dies, a quest item called the Stormblade will drop on the ground. Pick it up, then make your way to the top of the zone and look for the door to the Foothills. Go through the door and run directly toward the top of the zone until you find a waypoint and the door to a zone called the Boiling Lake. Activate the waypoint, then go through the door. From the entrance, run directly toward the top of the zone. Sometimes you'll be able to run in a straight line directly to the boss of this zone, named the Basilisk, while other times you'll find one or more walls before you find the boss. If you do run into a wall, always navigate around it to the right and keep going toward the top as soon as possible. When you get close to the Basilisk, you'll start seeing the statues of all the victims that it turned to stone. Run toward the direction the statues are facing to find and kill the boss. When it dies, the Basilisk will drop a quest item called Basilisk Acid, and all of its petrified victims will start waking up. Pick up the quest item, grab the crafting recipe, ignore the statues, and go back to town. When you get there, talk to Pitaris and Vanya, and they'll give you a piece of gear as a reward for collecting the Stormblade. After that, talk to Sin. He won't give you anything, but doing so will put another exclamation mark over Pitaris and Vanya's head. Go talk to them again, and they'll give you a new quest item called the Bottled Storm. From there, use the waypoint in town to go back to the Vastiri Desert. When you load in at the waypoint, run directly to the right until you find a wall. When you reach it, run along the wall toward the top side of the zone until you find a small wooden bridge with a big sandstorm blocking the path. When you get close with the Bottled Storm in your inventory, the sandstorm should subside and allow you to go through the door to a zone called the Oasis. This zone is pretty big, but we're looking for the door to a room called the Sand Pit. The most reliable way that I've found to look for it is to follow the right wall of the zone all the way around the whole thing until you find the correct door. That may take a little while to find, depending on the layout you get, but you will find the door eventually. There is one other door to look out for. It leads to a different room called the Forbidden Vault. That room contains some lore about Jun and the Betrayal League encounters, but there are no quests or anything else of any significance to us in there, so you can ignore that door if you find it. When you find the sand pit, go inside to fight a giant scorpion named Shakari. This boss is pretty simple, but there are a couple things you need to look out for. She has a couple of attacks that apply a long debuff to your character if they hit you. While that debuff is on you, your character will have a purple aura and leave traces of that aura wherever you run. If you stand in the traces of the purple aura your character leaves behind, it'll deal a notable amount of damage over time to you, so if you notice you have that debuff, keep moving and you'll avoid any damage dealt by the aura. When you get the boss's health down by about a quarter, she'll burrow under the sand and her tail will emerge at the start of the pathway on the top right side of the arena. If you get close, she'll use her tail to attack you, burrow again, then re-emerge further down the path. To continue the fight, follow her down the path and stand close to her tail to trigger each attack until she makes it to the next arena. If you run too far past her tail during this phase, she won't be able to attack you and therefore won't get any closer to the final arena, so make sure you stay close enough for her to target you. When you reach the third arena, she'll unburrow, maybe attack you once or twice, then probably burrow again and start diving all over the arena. Eventually, the boss will re-emerge and you can do your best to kill her before she starts burrowing again. When she's dead, Sin will swoop in and unlock another minor power in your Pantheon panel, then you can head back to town. When you get there, talk to Arasha to get a skill point as a reward for killing Shakari, then use the waypoint to teleport back to the Foothills. From the waypoint, run to the far left side of the zone and go through the door to the tunnel. The first thing you need to do here is look directly to the left side of the entrance and see if you find an Ascendancy Trial near the door. The trial will always spawn in this zone, but sometimes it's right near the entrance on the left side, and sometimes it's halfway through the zone on the top right side. If you forget to check by the entrance and realize later that it really is at the start of the zone, backtracking is a pain, so just check there first every time. After you find and complete the Ascendancy Trial, continue running toward the top left side of the zone until you reach the door to the Quarry. Go through and run from the entrance toward the top left until you find a waypoint. That waypoint is usually at the bottom of a small set of stairs, and at the top of those stairs on the left side, there should be a crafting recipe to pick up. Collect that, then run past the waypoint toward the top right side of the zone. When you reach the top right wall, you should see a door to another zone. There are two zones connected to this place. One is called the Shrine of the Winds, and one is called the Refinery. One of them always spawns here on the top right wall, but the location of the other depends on which one you found here. If you found the Shrine of the Winds first, then you'll have to run along the top right wall toward the top side of the zone until you find the door to the Refinery. If you found the Refinery first, then you'll have to run back toward the bottom left side of the zone toward the waypoint and continue running that way until you reach the bottom left wall of the zone. Somewhere in that area should be the door to the Shrine of the Winds. We have to complete objectives in both zones, so whichever one you end up doing first, I'll explain the Shrine of the Winds first since it's a bit quicker. This zone is simply an arena where you have to fight a pair of bosses named Kira and Garukhan. They take turns fighting you and disappearing while they summon extra monsters and giant tornadoes. It's a little annoying, but usually not too difficult to deal with. When Garukhan dies, Sin will swoop in and unlock your final Pantheon power, and the boss will drop a quest item called a Sekima feather. Collect it, then go back to town and give the feather to Arasha. She'll give you a skill point as a reward, then you can use the waypoint in town to go back to the Quarry. Now it's time to go over the Refinery. This is basically just another zone where we need to hunt down a boss. The boss's arena is always somewhere on the top right side of the zone, so go right from the entrance, then run through the buildings and look for different paths that let you go further to the top right until you find these big open doors. When you go inside, you'll fight a boss named General Addis. This boss doesn't look like much, but he's actually pretty dangerous. The lightning coils around the arena will constantly generate lightning beams that slow you if you touch them, and the boss has a lot of wide-reaching attacks that explode multiple times and do tons of damage. The only thing that makes this fight a little better is that the boss doesn't have a ton of HP or phases. Do your best to get through him, and when he dies, go through the door to the top right side of the room, click on the Theurgic Precipitate machine, and collect the Tarthan Powder quest item that falls out. Once you have it, go back to town and use the waypoint to return to the Quarry. If you haven't fought Garukhan in the Shrine of the Winds yet, now is the time to find and clear that fight. If you have completed both objectives, then talk to Sin next to the waypoint to give him the Basilisk Acid and the Tarthan Powder so that he can open the way into the belly of the beast. This zone is just as much of a long and terrible maze as it was the first time around in Act 4. I'd love to give tips on how to navigate it, but even for me, it's all guesswork all the time. When you reach the end, you'll find the door to a different zone called the Rotting Core. This zone looks a whole lot like the terrible maze that came before it, but thankfully this place is much smaller than the last one. Run away from the entrance toward the center of the zone, and you should be able to find the door to another zone called the Black Core before too long. Go through the door and talk to Sin. He'll say some stuff, then open the path to 3 separate zones at each of the 3 hearts on the edges of the island you're standing on. One leads to Dodri, one leads to Malagaro, and one leads to Chevron. Each zone is basically a long alley with monsters and hazards along the way that leads to a boss room. Out of all 3 of them, the only boss with any noteworthy mechanics is Dodri. When you get to her arena, she summons 3 totems on the edges of the room that constantly apply stacking debuffs to you. To stop the debuffs, you can kill the totems, but eventually she'll teleport to the center of the room, resummon the totems, then start screeching to deal tons of damage through the entire arena. The only way to avoid that damage is to hide behind the totems without killing them. Other than that one mechanic, these 3 bosses are pretty trivial. Go through each zone and kill all 3 of them, then talk to Sin again. He'll channel something on the big spike in the middle of the room and open the door to the Black Heart. Go inside to fight the final boss of Act 9, the Depraved Trinity. There are really only 3 main mechanics that you need to look out for in this fight. The first mechanic is these pools of red or purple sludge that the boss occasionally throws out. Regardless of the color, the sludge deals no damage, but if you stand in the red sludge, you get a stacking debuff that makes you take more and more damage the higher the stacks go, and if you stand in the purple sludge, you get a stacking debuff that makes you slower and slower the higher the stacks go. Do your best to avoid both of these while dodging the other attacks. The second mechanic to look out for is that when you get the boss's health to certain thresholds, it will jump out of the arena and summon a bunch of scorpion monsters. These scorpions are not tough to kill, but they do deal a ton of damage for some reason, so try to kill them before they hit you too much. The last mechanic is that sometimes the boss will summon a giant red ball of lightning, then throw it across the arena where it'll linger for a while after it hits the wall. This ball deals a ton of damage even while the boss is summoning it, so make sure to stand a good distance away from the boss as often as possible to avoid the ball entirely, or if you're playing a melee build, be ready to jump away as quickly as possible if you see the boss start summoning it. When you get the hang of dealing with those 3 mechanics, the rest are pretty simple to avoid. Kill the boss and the arena will get filled with blood, then teleport you to a little room with loot, Whalemroth, and Lilyroth. Talk to Lilyroth and click the Sail to Oriath button to end Act 9 and start Act 10. That's the entire act, and those are the paths that I take. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or in my chat while I'm live both here and on Twitch. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. If you want to see similar guides for the rest of the acts, I'll put a playlist of all of them in the description and the pinned comment down below. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.